Hello, it's Christian here, and before we get started with this week's edition of The Fast and the Curious, I'd like to issue a formal apology on behalf of everyone on the podcast and everyone connected to it. It came to our attention after the recording that myself and our team principal, Greg James, had done the entirety of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix race debrief without doing our traditional Azerbaijan Grand Prix joke. Baku, bless you. We apologise for this oversight and promise to learn from it as a podcast, and we will move on accordingly. Please enjoy the episode. Thank you.
Welcome to the Fast and the Curious Baku debrief. Late drama, a McLaren masterclass, and even without the crash, have Williams just put themselves in a brilliant spot for the rest of the season? This is Greg James, a very excited Greg James. My God, we've got Christian Hugill. Baku delivered, didn't it, Christian?
It did. It very much did. Did you enjoy being a sports presenter there? Felt like you were doing your best Martin Tyler. Felt like you were really getting into it.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Christian, and welcome to the Fast and the Curious. We give you a race debrief after every race, and my God, was that a good one. I'm sweating after listening to that. High drama in my house. I've been doing the gardening while listening to that today. And it gave it an extra layer of stress, actually. My God.
It was. I mean, I can't remember for a long time a race where we had such an open battle for the win throughout the race. And also the fact that it could easily have been, a 3 or 4-way battle for the win. We've said a few times this season, based on what we all went through last year, that we should savour these moments where there's battles for the win. But there's battles for the win, and there's battles for the win. And goodness me, that was a battle for the win.
So welcome to any new listeners. I'm sure there will be a few new ones, because when this sport gets interesting, people's ears prick up and they go, all right, I might lean in again. So if you are leaning in for the first time in a while, this is the Fast and the Curious. We give you a race debrief every Sunday. And then we have special guests from the world of Formula One. Yes, it will be the drivers. Yes, it's team principals. It's your engineers. It's your strategists. It's your up-and-coming drivers. It's all sorts. All of those are on our YouTube channel and on this feed. So make sure you are following us and subscribing to us. Shall we go through the big stories then? I mean, I loved this race. And I felt for Oscar Piastri when he said, that was the most stressful afternoon of my life. And well done to him. What a victory. This is a superstar, isn't it, in the making?
Yeah, the headline of the race is going to be the crash, but we'll get on to that because it is worth saying right at the start. I'm not one of these people, Greg, and I think you know this about me, that goes, I told you so. But I have been saying all season, he's special. And Karun Chandak, friend of the podcast, who was co-commentating on the race for Sky, said you have to keep reminding yourself that he's only in the second season. And that's such a good point. If you think back to last year, where Lando had such a convincing edge over him, and he would, because Lando's been in the sport a long time. Lando's a race-winning driver, and Oscar's progression has been fantastic. And that is such a great example of his progression. The way he managed that race. He said, Greg, as you just said, that was the most stressful weekend of my life. To know when to challenge Charles, to know when to push, to know when to look after the tyres, to not hit a wall, to not have a crash. Baku is one of those circuits where if you make a mistake, you're in the wall. That was quick. It was mature. It showed racecraft. That was a performance from Oscar Piastri that neatly summarises and wraps in a bow why I think he will be a world champion. That was a sensational drive. And also, Charles Leclerc did very, very well as well. Those two, it was a pleasure watching those two battle. Two elite-level sportsmen having a good, clean, fun battle. It was fantastic. Well done, Oscar.
The first bit of the race I was watching on the telly, I jumped off the sofa and went, go on, Oscar, go on that overtake. It was really exciting racing. So that was a brave move. But then to be in that position, the reason he's saying it was the most stressful afternoon of his life is because he had to defend for the majority of that Grand Prix. And that's horrible. As anyone who drives a car knows, if you've got someone up your ass for that long, it's stressful. You obviously it's different. You deal with it differently in the real world. But he defended so brilliantly, didn't he?
Yeah, but he had to, in the start of the Grand Prix and in the first stint, he had to attack, and it looked like Charles was comfortable. It was so impressive race management. We know Oscar's got raw speed. He's demonstrated with his move on his teammate in Italy, he's a demon overtaker. He launches upon people when they don't expect it. But then that clever race management, Alain Prost, when he was driving, who younger listeners won't know, he's a legendary former world champion. He was known as the professor when he was driving because he had a calm, analytical approach and his management was fantastic. That was quite Prost-esque, and that, trust me, is a huge compliment, the way he managed that Grand Prix. He's just the real deal. This is only his second season. And by the way, right, if McLaren are as competitive from Bahrain, or from Australia, I should say, the first race of next season, right from the off, Oscar Piastri is a title contender next season. A huge title contender.
Will this feel like his first proper win? Obviously, he won in Hungary, but will it feel more satisfying for him?
With everything that happened there, yeah, quite simply, Greg, yes, I think it will. Because this wasn't just any old race win. This was so impressive. The battle to, it's such a fine balance between, because Formula One, you can't just push 100% all the time. You've got to manage the car. So the way he did that with not burning out his tyres, like Leclerc said in the end, Leclerc ended up finishing 10 seconds behind Oscar because the tyres were just cooked. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. It was just, I can't praise Oscar Piastri enough for that performance. Wonderful.
If Alain Prost was the professor, what are we going to call Oscar? Is he the Wizard of Oz? What are we going to go for?
He's so calm.
The Wizard's quite nice, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but Wizard sort of gives me Dumbledore and Gandalf vibes, and Oscar's cooler than that. He's Mr. Cool. I know it's not particularly cool to say the word cool now, is it? But he's the cool customer. He's just so smooth.
The cool
customer.
The cool customer. Oh, I was looking for some sort of Australian link, so that's why I went for Wizard of Oz. But yeah,
Wizard of Oz. Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, I missed that. I'm a bit hungover.
No, if you're missing it, then I feel like it's not going to catch on. But we'll see. We'll plant it out there. Any listeners, will let us know what you want us to refer to Oscar Piastri as. Nicknames for him, please.
Yeah, Fast Curious Pod.
Along the lines of Alain Prost being the professor, which is, by the way, a great nickname.
Isn't it?
The professor, you've done really well in your life.
Yeah.
It's the professor. We trust him. He's going to be fine.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
So on a larger scale, this is great for McLaren. So they have put in some serious damage limitation work here. They're now 20 points ahead of Red Bull in the constructors. And let's talk about Lando, because he had a fantastic race as well.
Yeah, he had an absolutely sensational race. So in qualifying, for anyone who missed it, the track was developing so quickly as more rubber was being laid down. The track was getting faster and faster and faster. So it meant that you couldn't just rely on one of your times from earlier in the session. And Lando's crucial lap right at the end, he hit a yellow flag, so had to ease off, and he was out of qualifying. And it was very, very unlucky. It's not one of those where you go, he's made a big mistake, he's bottled it under the pressure. That was just hugely unlucky. And it was nice actually to see Lando come out and go, there's nothing I could have done there. That's unlucky, because we've spoken about him being hard on himself. The way he knuckled down and got on with the job, didn't beat himself up, and what a drive from him today. So we've criticised McLaren in the past for strategy-wise this season. We've criticised them for sort of not being quite ready to win. They aced it today. Absolutely aced it with both Oscar and Lando. And that running long in the first stint enabled Lando to not get in the way of anyone and pump in quick lap times and be basically quiet and get on with the job. He didn't box early and come out amongst back markers. He ran a long stint. He did his own race. He got on with it. And therefore they bought him out after the stop in clean air. It was an unmessy race. It was fantastic. And then the way he reeled in Max after the stop, he repaid his team's perfect strategy with a brilliant drive. And if you'd had said to Lando Norris after Q1, you'll finish ahead of Max tomorrow, he would have snapped your hand off. Thank you very much. I shall take that in my back pocket and off to Singapore I go. Thank you very much. I mean, yes, on another day, he could have won the race. He could have been up there battling for the win. but you look at it and damage limitation, that happens in motorsport. To have taken points out of Max Verstappen, fantastic.
So really clutching a sort of victory from the jaws of defeat, because yesterday on the Fast and the Curious WhatsApp group, there was a lot of, oh God, this is bad for Lando. But that's him showing his mettle, mettle, and really showing that I think he's still in with a shout of getting that Drivers' Championship. I know that's a bit outlandish, but Max is on 313, Lando on 254.
So that's a 59-point gap.
I know, but we've got a lot of the season left.
No, Greg, I'm with you. I'm completely with you. The reason I'm with you is because earlier race debriefs, I was saying it's still a long way to go. But what you've got to bear in mind is I sort of presume that if Max wasn't winning it, he was going to be finishing second. But
Right.
Actually what's happening is Lando, the McLaren, as we've seen, has got the pace to win. And yet you look at Max's last results, he's not been... he's only been on the podium once recently, and that was in the Dutch Grand Prix. But prior to that, you have to go back to Silverstone. There was a 5th in Hungary, 4th in Belgium, 6th in Italy. Obviously, this Grand Prix, he finished 5th. That would have been a lot worse were it not for the crash, which we'll get onto. So actually, it is possible because you've got a chance of, say, with what, is it 7 Grand Prix left? Forgive me if I've got that wrong. I think it's 7. But if you've got, if Lando's winning and taking 25 points and Max is finishing 4th or 5th, he's getting 12, 10 points. It is possible. It would, especially then, imagine, if Max had a grid penalty or had a DNF, it is possible. They need to keep believing. Stranger things have happened in this sport. 50-odd point gap. It is possible.
It's really exciting, and we will be covering it every step of the way. And can I just say, I think I've cracked how to enjoy a Grand Prix now.
A new strategy.
I had a new race strategy.
Yeah.
I started on the telly, and then at lap 25 onwards, I was on the radio listening in the garden. You get so much information because you had the brilliant Karun Chanduk and Bernie Collins. And then on the radio today, they really talked it through brilliantly. So it was Andrew Benson, and who else was on?
So on the BBC's coverage, you had Ben Edwards,
Jenny Gow,
and Mark Priestley.
But I thought Andrew Benson not on? Have I got that wrong?
Andrew Benson was on as well. Yeah, the BBC's. We mentioned him on the last podcast. He's the BBC's F1 correspondent. Great team.
Great teams. Just talking me through it, and there were some really interesting points brought up. The one that you sort of mentioned earlier, you touched on, was that Leclerc and Piastri shows that the sport of racing at this level is in really good health. There's a really good new generation coming through. So that's the first thing, which is exciting for the future.
Oh, massively.
And the other thing is one of them called it and said, very unusual in Baku not to have a safety car. I know there's only 5 laps remaining, but, and then I dropped my trowel because it was...
Dropped your trowel. I thought you were going somewhere else with that.
I dropped my trousers. Almost that exciting. Dropped my trowel in a very camp move. But talk us through the crash, please, because this is the big talking point, as you said, aside from McLaren doing well and Oscar winning. What about this crash, and what does that mean?
Well, okay, let's talk about the crash first. I've watched this over and over again. So obviously, Sergio Perez has lost a position in the previous corner, and then he finds himself behind 2 Ferraris. So then he goes to stick it up the inside of Carlos Sainz,
so to speak,
as it were. And my reading of it is, I just think it's a really clumsy racing incident. And Greg, you said that the BBC had made the point of the racing being in such great position. These sort of things don't happen very often because they are the best in the world. There's been so few safety cars this season. It's a really good grid. You know what I mean? We're not having many clangers being dropped. But I do just think this is just a little bit clumsy from the two of them. I'm struggling to apportion blame to either of the two drivers. Watching it, I'm literally got it in front of me now. I don't, there is definitely, because you can watch where Carlos is in comparison to the white line on the street. And Carlos definitely moves to the left a little bit as they touch. Checo is up the inside, but also I think could move to the left a little bit more. I just think this is one of those incidents where they're racing at such high speeds with such high stakes that I think they just clumsily trip over each other. I think it's a racing incident. I should say, we record these debriefs straight after the race. So it might be by the time you're listening to this, one of the two of them has got a penalty or something. But my gut instinct is telling me racing incident. Both could have done more to avoid a collision. Both do move in the direction of each other.
Extraordinary that there wasn't anything else that happened throughout the race, really. I mean, there was the Yuki Tsunoda Lance Stroll thing at the very start, but that was kind of dull.
And also that was just a typical turn one Baku. Yeah.
But you see that how narrow those streets are. You see the size of those cars now, and it is extraordinary there's not more.
And also fewer mistakes.
There were hardly any mistakes. Now, that makes Oscar's drive even more incredible. There were no mistakes, and the pressure that man was under, my God.
But across the field, you don't have too many drivers at the moment binning it or making mistakes. It was a high-quality Grand Prix in every single area.
It's one of my favourites I think I've ever watched. It's definitely up there with the best we've seen since we started the pod, I'd say.
My dad said that, Greg. Dad texted me and said, "Oh, this is the most I've enjoyed a race for years and years and years."
Yeah. It did feel different, didn't it? From the off, it felt different. It was actually, as soon as you saw the move that Oscar made on Charles Leclerc, you think, oh.
And throughout the race as well. Throughout the race, so many examples of that, Greg.
Just before we move on from the crash, Checo Perez, even though he crashed, actually, he had a pretty decent race. Will that take the pressure off him as the season draws to a close?
He's very, very good in Baku. He was second in Baku with the fastest lap of the race when his teammate was first in 2022. He won the race last year, and Checo's never won a race since then, I don't think. I think that was Checo's last win was Baku last year. So that is right. Yeah. So the answer to your question, Greg, no, I don't think it does, because Checo's very, very, very good in Baku. I'd be very surprised if that carries on for the rest of the season, that Checo's quicker than Max. It's just probably the only track on the calendar where I think Checo does have an advantage over Max Verstappen is this race.
Maybe he just likes driving around town.
Maybe.
It just feels like...
It gets nice seeing the castle in the distance.
It's nice to be, at a junction.
Yeah.
Going zooming past it.
Well, he does do well on street circuits. He also does well on other street circuits. But I think from Singapore, you'll see Max back ahead of him again. Okay. Max he's so struggling with this car. Even Checo was able to get more out of that car than him this weekend. But it's such a shame for Checo that this better race didn't result in a podium for him, because it looked for all the world like at least he would be on the podium, which we've not seen. When was the last time Checo was on the podium? He's not had a podium since China, all the way back in China, round 5. So, it's such a shame for him. But as I say, just a clumsy move. And by the way, I mentioned Singapore then. Bear in mind, that was the only race last year a Red Bull car didn't win, was in Singapore. So next weekend is a big, look how much Max is struggling. Not much is going to change in a week. Big opportunity for Lando Norris next weekend. He needs to be winning that Grand Prix and hoping that Max is struggling like he was struggling today.
He's going to do it. He's going to do it. You told us not to get carried away, but I got carried away. It's too late. Goodbye. They're carrying me off.
So long.
Can Williams start getting carried away as well? Alex Albon in 7th. Franco Colapinto in 8th. First time that's happened this season. 2 drivers from Williams in the points.
Right. Okay, there's so much to dig into here. Firstly, can they get carried away, Greg? No, they can't. Because the Williams car is good in a straight line. So we saw this in Italy. We saw this in Baku. I would not expect that Williams to be as competitive in other circuits that do not have such big, long straights. Unfortunately, it benefits their car. But what you need to do when you're battling for positions in the Constructors' Championship like Williams are, is when you are on a track that suits your car, you have to take advantage. Now, Alex Albon always does. He's fantastic. We know this. This has been a constant theme of this podcast since its birth. Alex Albon does fantastically well. But Franco Colapinto, in only his second full Grand Prix weekend, his first time driving at that circuit ever, to get points on only his second Grand Prix for Williams, that is sensational. It shows a couple of things. It shows Franco Colapinto is a great driver and will be putting himself firmly in the picture for a full-time race seat in the future. It shows Logan Sargent wasn't operating at the required level, because I don't think you'd have got that from Logan today, unfortunately. Franco, in both Grand Prix, not just this one, has shown he's capable of running closer to Alex than Logan did.
Just to say, he scored more points than Logan did across his whole time in F1.
Well, Logan only ever got 1 point, and that was only because there was a double disqualification in Austin last year. So,
right,
maybe if you're James Vowles, you sat there thinking, I possibly should have made this decision earlier in the season. That's what maybe they should be taking from it. But phenomenal from Williams. Yes, of course, they benefited from the crash, and that would have been, it was 7th and 8th, and that would have been 9th and 10th. But still, they bagged those points when they had the opportunity to do so. And by the way, we should underline why the Constructors' Championship is so important. For teams that don't have unlimited resources, like the likes of Mercedes and Ferrari, you are desperate to finish ahead of your rivals in the Constructors' Championship, not just for the glory and for the, for their racing, but that is where prize money is awarded. So Williams have leapfrogged Alpine into 8th in the Constructors' Championship because of those points. If they were to finish that place higher than Alpine, that would be a chunk more prize money. That is vital for teams like Williams and Alpine. And Williams have looked like nowhere near Alpine at points this season. So that is huge for them. And maybe they'll be, Haas are in the distance on 29 points, largely because Nico Hülkenberg's done a fantastic job for them this season. But huge for Williams. Huge for Williams, and potentially huge for the Constructors' World Championship.
Speaking of Williams, our next episode will feature the team principal of Williams, Mr. James Vowles. So that'll be out next week. You can hear that on this feed or on our YouTube channel, which you might be watching now, which I'm waving at the camera just to say hi and welcome. So yeah, come back for James Vowles, who will also be bringing one of their wind tunnel engineers, Christina, onto the podcast so we can quiz her about what the hell that job entails, because that will be a fascinating chat.
And it's a special episode devoted to how to get jobs in Formula One, how to get into Formula One, which is a question I get asked all the time. So it's a brilliant chat. We're focusing purely away from the track on getting into Formula One. And James is fascinating, as is as his recruits that he brought with him. So yeah, that's really worth listening to. I loved doing that chat.
Can I, before we move on from Williams, and can I have my own cubby hole this weekend, please?
Yeah, so we normally do Christian's cubbyhole, which is the thing that I, think people might have missed. But this weekend, it's
no. You can have your cubbyhole. Obviously, that's a staple. But
Greg's Garage.
Greg's Garage. I just wanted to say that it gave me my first laugh of the day when I woke up, and I saw the fan attached to Alex Albon's car as it was.
So funny.
Oh my God! What? Have you ever seen that? That's not happened before, is it?
No, I've been watching Formula One since the 90s. I don't remember one of those being left on before. Things have been left on, but not one of those. It was also, what's funniest about it as well is that it's bright yellow. Like it's a luminous highlighter pen yellow. Couldn't be more obvious if it tried. So that was truly exceptional.
It's so wonderfully rubbish that can happen at that level, and I feel for everyone involved. But it didn't have much of an impact, did it, in the end, or did it? No.
Oh, that was fine because he chucked it off and he still got to do his qualifying lap. Could have been disastrous.
What I thought was interesting though, and I saw a few people talking about this, was that they were saying that on the radio they said, "Don't let the marshal touch the car."
Yes.
Don't let the marshal touch the car. Because what does that mean?
Because that means you've had outside assistance. The minute you get outside assistance, you can't compete in the session.
Right.
So, for example, if you spin off in the gravel in the race and a marshal pushes you out, you've had outside assistance and you're done. So if the marshals had been helping him, he'd have had that assistance and he wouldn't have been able to compete in the session. But because he chucked it off himself, it basically, you'll get an unsafe release, but that's only a fine.
It's so shonky. One of my favorite things in the world is when you see top level sport, the very pinnacle of the sport, be reduced to a sort of rainy go-kart day.
Yeah.
At Brands Hatch. Or say I'm exactly the same with cricket. When top level cricket looks like it could be played on a village green in Essex, like it's very, very village to leave the fan in. And he goes, "Don't let the marshal touch the car. Just chuck it off. Just chuck it off onto the road." Over.
Can we also, while we're doing laugh out loud moments of the weekend, and producer Jimmy put this in our WhatsApp group, and I was watching the race with 3 other people, and it got so obviously the commentators are going for it, and it's a fight for the win, and the commentators are commentating, and then you get the doo-doo-dum, where you think there's going to be some really important information. It says Charles Leclerc, team radio, as they're going for the win, doo-doo-dum, and his race engineer just goes, "Come on." That was worth the input, wasn't it? Come on. Oh my God, that was funny. We laughed out loud like a fully big lol. Come on. So good.
So is that your cubby hole for the weekend?
No, my cubby hole, that isn't my cubby hole. My cubby hole...
Sorry, we're leaving Greg's garage and we're going to Christian's cubby hole.
Okay.
They are adjacent buildings.
Yes, sure. And because I've only got a cubby hole, because you're team principal, you've got a garage. And I will one day hope to work my way up to garage level if I concentrate and do my job, put in good performances.
Oh, let's imagine it even more then. So you open the garage,
yeah,
and then in the skirting board, like a little thing from Tom and Jerry, the mouse's cubby hole is where you sit.
Do you know what I'm envisaging it as the cupboard under the stairs in the Harry Potter films when he lives with the Dursleys? That's how I envisage it. Yeah.
That's where you are.
That's where I am. So welcome. Come on in. Take a seat. There's not much room. Welcome to my cubby hole. Oh, I'm getting creepy now, aren't I? I'm starting to creep myself out. I'd like to apologise. Anyway, Christian's cubby hole mentioned things you might have missed was something I missed, actually. And somebody pointed it out to me on Twitter who was watching the German TV coverage.
Yeah.
Because the German TV coverage focuses on the German drivers a lot more. And Nico Hülkenberg apparently picked up some damage from debris. And because of that, Ollie Bearman got past everything was focusing at the front. There was all the stuff going on. The last we sort of had seen the Haas drivers, Hülkenberg had passed Bearman on track, and it looked like Hülkenberg was going to finish ahead of the two. But Hülkenberg had damage. You need your teammate to be in a good position when you pick up damage. And Haas had exactly that. Ollie Bearman, who did a great job standing in for Carlos Sainz in Saudi, has now done a brilliant job standing in for Kevin Magnussen here, gets himself a point. And if anyone can find this out, Fast Curious Pod, when was the last time a Formula One driver, because I've tried and can't find this, when was the last time an F1 driver scored points for 2 separate constructors in one season? I had a quick look and couldn't find it. Fast Curious Pod, on the comments on YouTube or Instagram, whatever. Ollie Bearman has now scored points for Haas and Ferrari. Wow. So great drive for him. Benefited from the crash, got a point. Points for 2 different constructors this year. And he's proven this weekend yet again, if you're Ayo Komatsu, you're thinking, yeah, I've made a good decision there putting Ollie in the car. That was a really solid weekend for him because Nico is not an easy driver to go up against as a teammate. So, yeah, well done, Ollie Bearman. Excellent work.
And yet another example of what the commentators on the BBC were saying of that the future is looking bright in racing, having Ollie Bearman, Franco Colapinto. We're going to have Kimi Antonelli next year. We've got Oscar Piastri winning races in his second season. It's looking good, isn't it? It's exciting.
Yeah, because there were drivers who, frankly, have had their time. At the moment, you know, Kevin Magnussen was a fantastic Formula One driver. It is time for someone new to come in now. I would say the same probably with Zhou Guanyu. There are these drivers that you think, have you had your time now? And the fact that we've seen 2 rookies come in this year, and Colapinto and Bearman, and both do fantastic jobs. Yeah, the future is bright. Next year will be fantastic. So, yeah, I just sat there, Greg, at one point and thought, this is a pleasure watching this. You know, on a Sunday afternoon, after what we endured last year, we've got fight for the wins. We've got talented drivers. We are going to have such an enjoyable final 7 or so races of the season. And goodness me, I think next weekend's because we'll be back obviously in the week with the James Vowles episode, but that's more away from the track. So this is the last time I'll speak to you before the Singapore weekend. That is a massive weekend in this Drivers' Championship.
Yeah, it's going to be a brilliant end to the season. 7 races remaining. If you've just discovered us on your podcast feeds, then come back for more because we'll give you a debrief after every race. And as we said, a special guest in the week, James Vowles, and a wind tunnel engineer by the name of Christina, who we'll get to know in a few days' time. Before we go, a little reminder that NordVPN are an absolute must for any F1 fans planning on heading to any of the races for the rest of the season, or just going on holiday and not near your home comforts of your favorite streaming services and platforms. You can use it to change your virtual locations to keep up to date on all your TV and radio when you're away from home. Maybe you're working at one of the races, or maybe you're just going for fun. You can also use it to help you save money when you're planning your next trip to a Grand Prix, because some flights and hotels, the costs change depending on where you book from, which is sneaky, isn't it? But we can beat that. So changing your location when you're sorting all your logistics could help you spend less. It's also safe, very safe, super safe, I'd say, because NordVPN protects your data when you're using public Wi-Fi wherever you are in the world. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, you know what to do, Christian. Go to nordvpn.com/TFATC. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the description of this episode. Yes, dear.
Just before we go, and I know we're ending the episode, Betty's on holiday and we'll be back soon. But while it's just us two, I want to do a quick post-credits bit for anyone who's stuck this far. Something that I think you'll really appreciate that Betty definitely wouldn't and would take the mickey out of, but we can geek out on a minute.
Oh, yeah.
I want to show you something just before we go. All right, stay there.
Oh, dear. Producer Jimmy, what's this going to be?
Oh, God.
Oh, no, interested in this.
I've got a new model. Now, I collect model Formula One cars, and this one was going really cheap.
Looks good, that.
On eBay because it was broken. And this week, I've lovingly repaired it with model glue and repainted where it broken. And I am an ambassador for Race Against Dementia, which is the charity set up for Sir Jackie Stewart, by Sir Jackie Stewart. And this is the team he used to own in the 90s. It is a Stewart F1 car.
That's lovely.
And it's the latest edition, picked up very cheap because it was broken. And I sat there and lovingly painted it and lovingly put it back together, much to my boyfriend's amusement, who was laughing at me doing it and how satisfied I was doing it. So a new addition to the model collection, Greg. And I know you love a model.
I do. That's fantastic. Oh, actually, can I just run down and get a model that I got?
Yeah, we'll do model chat. Yeah, fine. Well, while Betty's away.
Jimmy, do you mind if we...
No. Crack on.
Do you mind? I mean,
we've completely derailed it.
You will love... I mean, you might not love this, but I loved it. Wait a second. Hang on.
Well, no, I'm excited for this, Greg. So Greg's gone to get it. Meanwhile, while we're filling for time, I'll just show the YouTube viewers the car in all its glory. I do like a white livery. I do. And it's the white 90s livery. I'll describe it for the...
Might not use all this, Christian.
Apparently, producer Jimmy's going to cut this, but that's fine. It's HSBC branded white, a Ford-powered engine. There we go.
I'll cut back in when Greg gets it.
That's probably enough of that, isn't it?
Right.
Oh, Greg's back. Here we go.
Okay.
If this isn't an excuse to watch on YouTube, by the way, go and check out the YouTube channel. You get me and Greg showing off each other's models. I mean, God.
So fans of the podcast will know that I've long had a real... Thunderbird's Tracy Island sat behind me.
Yes, people spotted this and picked it out.
So that's an original from the 90s. Okay,
yeah.
That was the most sought after Christmas present in sort of 93, 94. They sold out at Toys R Us.
Of course it did.
I got a delivery this week and a note. Hi, Greg. This is the Thunderbirds model from Anderson Entertainment, sent over by Joe at jerryanderson.com. Works for Jerry, the Jerry Anderson, as in Jerry Anderson, who did all the Thunderbird stuff.
Yeah.
This is one of 2,000.
Oh,
limited edition 2024 version.
Oh, stunning.
Of Thunderbird 2.
And look at it, how beautiful it is in the box as well.
Look at that.
Love that.
Isn't that amazing?
Has that got a matte finish?
A matte finish.
That is great.
Isn't that insane? Producer Jimmy's just making sort of sex noises with it, and I think that's appropriate.
I do like that a lot, Greg.
How cool is that?
Careful with it. Greg's just balanced it on top of his microphone for those listening on the podcast.
Baller.
That's what a way to end.
So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And We'll be back with James Vowles next week.
Shall we do a spin-off podcast just focusing on models, or is that too much?
Yeah, happy for that. Yeah, would love that.
All right, bye-bye now.